pop you up. Oh dear, hold on. There we go. Right, send the request to Helen. Send. Oh, there she is. Let her join us before I start explaining what we're doing. Hey, Simon.
Hello.
Hey. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good to see you. It's been
It's been a
too
while.
long.
Yes. I think last time was from a campsite, I think, wasn't it?
It was. You did a very good job with quite a big audience and the technology letting you down, but it was absolutely brilliant, absolutely incredible. And yeah, your story is, as I said in my post, I think worthy of a book. The journey you've been on with your health. And we've known each other for about a year now, haven't we? But I had no idea what you've gone through and what you've overcome. But that's maybe for another time. But I'm really glad that you're here today talking to my audience, and then people can catch up with it later, because I think it's really, really important for us to start to understand the importance of our thyroid health. And it's not probably something you think about until something goes a bit wrong, and then suddenly you realise how important it is. So for you guys that are just joining us now and watching later, Helen is an incredible nutritionist. She's actually based in France, although she's from the UK. And she has her own story of her life living with Hashimoto's disease, which is a thyroid condition. And, you know, you had a really different background, didn't you? And through a health challenge, as many of us experience, you suddenly find your whole life is turned upside down, and then you find your real, you know, true purpose in life to help others be well.
Yeah.
For your own experience. So do you want to just sort of give us a quick summary of how you've got to where you are now and what you now do?
Okay, so I originally trained in biomedical sciences, and I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a number of years before moving to France. And since moving to France, I have been working as a private chef and running a catering company with my husband, who is a trained chef. And yeah, that is pretty much what we were doing. And when my health started to become really quite bad, the only reason I was able to continue working, I think, was because I was working with my husband and he was able to pick up some of the slack when I was at my worst. I think other than that, I would have probably had to quit work. My illness was pretty bad at its worst point. That has led me into studying and researching more into the health side of things. I was getting pretty frustrated with not getting the answers I was hoping for through medication and from kind of the doctors. So I started using my background in science to research. I studied nutrition and health coaching. I'm also studying nutritional therapy. And I also saw a nutritional therapist myself, and that really helped get to the bottom of what was going on with me, and made me realise that you can actually turn autoimmune conditions around, such as Hashimoto's. You don't have to live with it. It isn't something that is permanent. Yes, you have to manage it. It's not something you can cure, but it is something you can put into remission. It is something that you can live symptom-free if you manage it properly. And I did that predominantly through diet and through lifestyle. Which is why I do what I do now, why I help others do exactly the same now, because there's just not that much information out there that is possible to recover to that extent. So I kind of love what I do now. So
I absolutely love stories like yours, and I can't get enough of them. And there are lots of people out there that are doing quite incredible things with their health, aren't they? From various chronic diseases where you are given quite a doom and gloom diagnosis, which can be quite horrifying. But there are so many people out there that are actually regaining their health through many routes, not just with medication, which is very empowering, and it's very much in our control. And you can regain your health and live a really full and happy life, as you are doing now. You are living proof that it can happen, because at your worst you were really you were really not able to live a normal quality of life at all, were you?
No, getting out of bed was a challenge. Washing my hair, kind of brushing my hair. I was in so much pain that I could hardly hold my arms up in order to do things like that. Some mornings I couldn't physically get out of bed on my own. I had to have assistance, like my husband had to help me out. Getting up and down the stairs was difficult. I was so short of breath, literally doing anything that, like the most basic things that you take for granted, even now speaking, kind of that takes energy that you don't even think about. And for me, I found that really difficult. I stopped socializing because I couldn't think, I couldn't get the words out my head, I couldn't speak properly, I slurred my words. I sounded like I was drunk, to be honest, which is not always the best look when you kind of in certain situations. So yeah, it made me quite reclusive, and it impacted my life massively.
Because it's not just physical, is it? It's physical,
No.
and it's how it impacts you physically and mentally. The knock-on of the symptoms really, really can put us in such a low place that it is quite hard to imagine coming out of it, but you are living proof that you can do that.
Yeah.
Could you explain to the guys that are watching now and people that are catching up later, what is the thyroid gland and why is it so important?
Okay, yeah. I've made a few notes so I don't miss
Mm.
anything. So your thyroid gland is basically, it's quite small and it's shaped like a butterfly, and it's located in your lower neck. So it's located just here. You can probably feel either side of it if you kind of put your kind of like little like fleshy kind of either side of your windpipe. That is your thyroid. It Its main role is to control your metabolism, which is the way in which your body produces, uses, and controls your energy. So it's quite important, because if that's not working properly, then you are going to notice a multitude of symptoms. It is part of your endocrine system, which is the system which produces your hormones, which control a multitude of things that are going on in your body, like your sex hormones, your stress hormones, like I said, your energy, your body temperature, your heart rate. There's a lot of things that it's responsible for. Predominantly, the thyroid is known for producing two hormones that are really quite important that we'll focus on today, and that is your T4 and your T3 hormones. And this is triggered by by stimulation from your TSH, which is released from your pituitary gland. So when your body needs more thyroid hormone, your pituitary gland produces TSH and releases that to basically kickstart your thyroid hormone production and release. If there's too much, it does the opposite. It basically lowers that TSH and tells you to stop producing as much. So it's very finely controlled. Okay. It is responsible, as I said, for quite a few things. So I'm going to list a few of them so you can get an idea of exactly how important it is that your thyroid functions properly.
Yeah.
So it's responsible for the speed of your heart rate. It's responsible for the speed and the depth of your breathing. It is responsible for, as I said, your metabolism, your weight gain, your weight loss, which is kind of how most people relate to metabolism, is kind of your weight. But that also kicks into your energy as well. The metabolism controls that. It controls your body temperature. It controls helps control your mood, your brain function, your skin, hair, and nail health and growth. It can impact your cholesterol levels. So I'll quite often see if people come in and they haven't been tested for hypothyroidism, and they have high cholesterol levels, that is the first thing that I will say is go get your thyroid levels checked. Because that is quite a common sign that something's not right with your thyroid. It can affect menstruation, it can affect your fertility. It's quite common for those who have hypothyroidism to struggle to get pregnant and to stay pregnant. That is quite common. And for basically hormone control, as it's part of your endocrine system, it's quite heavily involved in regulating your sex hormones and your cortisol levels as well. So basically they're just a few of the things that it is responsible for. So you can see from that why it's quite important that your thyroid hormone is optimal. It's needed by every cell in your body. Every cell in your body has thyroid hormone receptors. And the symptoms that you display will be indicative of which cells basically aren't getting enough thyroid hormone or are getting too much in the case of hyperthyroidism, potentially. So although it's a very small gland, it plays a massive role in your overall health. It does predominantly affect women. That is the majority of the clients that I see are female. I do have a private Facebook group for those who are wanting help with their diet and lifestyle. There are a few men in there, but there are not many. It is predominantly a female condition. So that is kind of just a brief overview of kind of what your thyroid is. Do you want me to go into a little bit of why it's important a little bit further?
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so when you've got too little thyroid hormone being produced, you're going to result in hyperthyroidism. It's going to slow everything down, and you are going to notice your symptoms are starting to kind of creep up. You're going to notice that you're fatigued. These are really common symptoms. You're gaining weight and you're struggling to lose it, even though you're eating healthily or you're exercising. You just can't stop putting that weight on. That is a really common symptom. Mood issues, so you can switch quite quickly from anxiety to feeling quite depressed and sad to feeling completely irrational. I had that, and it was really hard to deal with. You couldn't work out what your mood was going to be from one second to the next. The slightest thing could tip you one way or the other. You can notice hormone imbalances, so if you're struggling with things like severe PMS, low libido, infertility, as I mentioned before, irregular periods, they're all common signs of a thyroid disorder of hyperthyroidism. Muscle and joint pain are really common. Cold hands and feet. I was permanently cold. Obviously I live in the mountains and it is pretty cold here at times, but I was permanently cold, and I also struggled to regulate my temperature. So if I started to get hot, I couldn't lower that. I would quickly overheat, so I had to be really careful with things like sunstroke and things like that. Low body temperature, as I mentioned, dry and cracked skin. So if you've got really thick skin on your heels that is cracked, that is a very common symptom of hyperthyroidism, and that is something that I would again recommend getting checked if you do have that. Okay, what else? Brittle nails, excessive hair loss. Quite a lot of people, not only will they notice hair loss kind of from the head, but a lot of people will notice that the kind of end of their eyebrow starts to thin and disappear. I didn't have that, but it is a very common symptom. That kind of, so if you notice that kind of from like here on, your basically eyebrow has kind of the hair has stopped growing, get your thyroid checked. Yeah. Okay. IBS, constipation are really common with hyperthyroidism. Brain fog, poor concentration, poor memory. It's quite common for you to have a sore throat or to feel quite hoarse when you're speaking, so if you feel quite croaky. And it is also quite common to have swelling of your thyroid as well, so to have a goiter.
Yeah.
Puffy face, that is quite common, and puffy eyes. I used to have that quite a lot, although I never had massive issues with the weight gain. I did have the puffy face and the puffy, kind of really puffy around my eyes. I look back at photos now and it amazes me how it wasn't spotted earlier, because I had classic symptoms of it. Weakness in your muscles is really quite common. And then there are some other symptoms as well that aren't as common, but they do occur. I had pretty much all of them, unfortunately. Some people have very few of them. Some people may have fatigue, a little bit of weight gain, and that's it. But other people have the whole list from start to finish, unfortunately. So some of the things you may notice are if you're not sweating. That is quite common with hyperthyroidism. The heat intolerance I mentioned. Insomnia is really common. A low pulse rate, paleness. So I looked translucent. You could pretty much see through me. I was so pale. I never tanned, no matter how. I didn't have to wear sunscreen because I did not tan at all. I was always really, really pale. Shortness of breath, loss of appetite. Hearing loss can be a sign, as can blurry vision. Rapid heart rate on exertion, and that can be, like I mentioned before, that doesn't mean exercise, that can mean walking up and down the stairs, it doesn't, or washing your hair. There were times when I was showering that I had to get out the shower because I was so out of breath and I had chest pains and I felt like I was going to collapse. So they can be all indicators that something is not going well with your thyroid. Swollen ankles sometimes present, and also tingling and numbness in your like extremities in your hands, your feet, your legs, arms. I had that quite bad. I also have a B12 deficiency, and that's quite common with that as well. So some of the symptoms do cross over of the two. But they are things that you should be looking out for. If you are experiencing those, you need to get your doctor to check your thyroid levels. So let's have a look. So that is hypothyroidism. That's what you can experience when you have it. Now, Hashimoto's is the most common cause of hypothyroidism. It is an autoimmune disease. It is not a illness or a disease of the thyroid itself. There's nothing actually physically wrong with your thyroid. It is your immune system attacking your thyroid. And that's why we need to look at basically the underlying causes when we're dealing with it. Most of your dealings with your doctor, they will treat the hypothyroidism. They will not address the autoimmune side at all. There isn't really that many successful medical treatments, so it just kind of gets overlooked, unfortunately. Okay, so your immune system specifically attacks your thyroid peroxidase enzyme, which is responsible for converting your iodide to your iodine, which is your active form, and your iodine forms part of your thyroid hormone. So when I talked about your T3 and your T4, the T3 has 3 iodine molecules and the T4 has 4 iodine molecules. So you need that TPO enzyme in order to convert the iodine into it, well, the iodide into its active iodine. And it also assists with the binding to the thyroglobulin, which is kind of the other part of the thyroid hormone. So it is quite important that you try and stop that attack. And the thyroglobulin itself, as I said, is part of the hormone. So if it's attacking that, then you've kind of got a problem at both ends. You've got a problem. You can't get the iodine you need, and you can't form the hormones you need because basically the two things that are needed in order to do that are being attacked. Okay, so that results in, when your antibodies are attacking those two things, it results in a lower level of T4 and a lower level of T3 hormone production, which is going to lower your metabolism and it is going to increase the symptoms that you experience. So getting that autoimmune attack under control is really, really critical. A lot of people will say that you don't need to look at your antibodies. Your antibodies are just kind of there for diagnosis, to diagnose that you have the condition, and after that you shouldn't really bother with them. I don't agree with that. Basically, your antibodies are showing you how active your autoimmune attack is, how active the autoimmune attack is on your thyroid. So if your levels are really high, then your immune system is very actively attacking your thyroid. So you want to lower that. Oh, sorry, losing my voice. Okay, I think that gives a brief overview of kind of,
yeah,
hopefully what it does and kind of why it's important.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's incredible what such a small thing can do, isn't it?
Yeah.
And knock-on effect if it's, you know, either the immune system is attacking it or it goes off kilter. You started to touch on, you know, the diagnosing stage of it. I know that a lot of people can get frustrated, not just with thyroid issues, but all sorts of chronic conditions, when they go to their doctor and they know there is something not right, and they will do some blood tests and say, yeah, you're normal, it's all fine. Or they go and get diagnosed and then there's not a lot of support for them. So what 3 tips can you give somebody that maybe is watching this later? Because I have got a question for you, haven't I, from someone that's been recently diagnosed.
Yeah.
What are your 3 top tips? You've just been diagnosed or you feel there's something not right. What would you say from your experience and the people you work with? What would you offer as advice?
Okay, so my first tip when you're speaking with your doctor is make sure that you are getting a full thyroid panel run, not just your TSH. It's pretty typical for most doctors to just run your TSH, and I'll give you an example of why that is not helpful. I was diagnosed celiac in 2004, and at the same time that I had my thyroid checked, and that was the first time I'd had it checked, even though I'd had a lot of symptoms for quite a while. My TSH was abnormal. They reran the TSH a few weeks later, and it was fine, and that was it. They didn't pursue any other testing, and I didn't then have it retested for another 8 years. All the time I was getting sicker and sicker and really struggling day to day. What I know now is that they should have at least run my antibodies to see if I had Hashimoto's, because you can be subclinical, you can have elevated Hashimoto's antibodies and normal TSH, T4, T3. So they should have run that to see if I had an autoimmune condition coming into play. The reason they don't is because they don't treat the autoimmune side, so they don't see the reason in testing for it. But there's a lot you can do, so it is important that you know what is going on. So if your doctor is only running your TSH, that's not enough. You need to get that full panel done. So you need your TSH, you need your free T4, you need your free T3, your reverse T3, your thyroid peroxidase antibodies, and your thyroid globulin antibodies. They're the basics of what you need for your thyroid to basically get the full picture of what is happening. And you need these to be optimal, not just in range. And this is something that you will find. You've got a list of symptoms, you're on treatment, and they're basically saying to you, well, your results look fine, and you may be 1 point under the top of the range and you feel like shit, basically.
Yeah.
So you're not fine. You need that to be optimal, and everybody's optimal is different, and I will run through roughly what optimal should look like. So your TSH ideally should be under 2. That's where most people find that they function best. But it is the least important of the tests. It isn't actually your active hormone. It's only what stimulates the release of your hormone. So that one is, yes, it needs to be done, but it is not the most critical one. And if you're on a T3 medication, it will be suppressed. So if you're on a combination or a T3 medication and you go to your doctor and your TSH is kind of scraping the bottom of the range and your doctor panics that you're hypothyroid, if you're not having any symptoms and you're on one of those medications, that is perfectly normal, so don't worry. Okay, so your free T4 should be from mid-range to about the top third between there, and your free T3 should be in the upper half of the range, but ideally you want it in the top third. Your reverse T3 should be right at the bottom of the range, so it should be scraping the bottom, like 1 or 2 points of the range. If it's getting higher than that, you've got a conversion issue, or there's stuff going on that you need to address, such as infections, illness, stress. If you're using calorie restriction or excessively exercising, they're going to elevate your reverse T3. And then your antibodies, as I mentioned before, you want to aim for these to be as low as possible. And ideally, if you can get them under the range of what is classed as Hashimoto's, that is then classed as being in remission, that your immune system is no longer actively attacking your thyroid. That is possible. I've done it. I've done it with clients. And it means that you are stopping and slowing that autoimmune attack, and that you are getting rid of those symptoms so that you can kind of basically live how you want to be living and not struggling every day. So that's my first tip, is make sure you're getting all the tests that you need to be getting and make sure they're optimal. The second would be, when you're dealing with your doctor, is also to ask for your certain nutrients to be tested as well. There are certain nutrient deficiencies that are very common with Hashimoto's, and I'll briefly run through those, the thyroid-specific nutrients. So iodine, as we mentioned before, you need that in order to make your thyroid hormone. This can be controversial, and there is a lot of information out there of don't supplement with iodine if you have Hashimoto's, and then there's other information saying do. It was a game changer for me, but you have to do it right if you are going to do it, and you need to get tested before you even think about supplementing, and you need to make sure you're taking the co-nutrients with it, because it can be quite detrimental if you are not. So selenium and zinc are two others that are really very important for your thyroid health. They're needed by a certain enzyme, which is the 5-deiodinase enzyme. I always struggle to say that. Which helps convert your T4 hormone into your T3 hormone, which is your active form. And selenium can also help lower your thyroid peroxidase antibodies. So making sure they're optimal is really important. They can be tested through your GP. The iodine that I mentioned before, that's a specific test that you need, and you need to get that through a private lab. That's not something you're going to get through your GP. It's not very expensive, but it is worth doing. Iron is something, and is another thing that is commonly low in those who have Hashimoto's, and this is needed by that thyroid peroxidase enzyme that helps make and convert your hormones. So you need to make sure that is optimal and tested regularly. Every time I get my bloods done, I make sure I get my iron panel and my ferritin run alongside it, so I know what's happening. Vitamin D is another critical one for anyone with an autoimmune condition. It is an immune system regulator. So if your immune system is happily attacking some part of your body, which for Hashimoto's is your thyroid, you want your vitamin D to be optimal so it can help control your immune system as it should do. It can also help lower your thyroid peroxidase antibodies. Research has shown that. And you need to make sure you're taking the co-nutrients that go with it as well, same as for the iodine that I mentioned. B12 is something as well that I would ask that if a client came to me with hypothyroidism and hadn't had any of their co-nutrients tested, I would suggest B12 being checked. It is common for those with Hashimoto's to have a B12 deficiency as well, predominantly because your stomach acid is low, and that affects the absorption of the, oh gosh, I lost my words. It affects the intrinsic factor production, which helps the absorption of the B12. So you can't really absorb your B12 without that production of intrinsic factor. So it is important that that is checked as well, especially if you are being treated and you have lingering symptoms that aren't going away with medication, then definitely get that on the list of being checked. And again, same with the other tests, optimal. Aim for optimal. Don't aim for just in range. You want them to be kind of where they should be, not just kind of scraping in or kind of just above or just below the range. So, and then my third tip when you're dealing with your doctor is if your medication isn't working for you, get it changed. Try a different medication. There tends to be a standard prescription of levothyroxine, which is the T4 only medication. That is pretty much what is prescribed as a standard to start with. And for many that is fine, but not for all. It certainly wasn't for me. I didn't do very well on it. I still had pretty horrendous symptoms. It did help somewhat, but it did not get rid of those symptoms. So if you have got symptoms persisting, get your labs checked and make sure you're converting your T4 to your T3 correctly. So if your reverse T3 is elevated and your free T3 is low, that indicates that you're not converting very well. Also, if your doctor isn't testing reverse T3, look at your free T3 levels and your free T4. If your free T4 is normal, but your free T3 is low, even if it's in range, but it's really low, that indicates that you're not converting your T4 to your T3 correctly. So you might want to consider adding in a T3 medication or a combination medication or an NDT, a natural desiccated thyroid. I had to add in a combination medication. And that made a massive difference for me. Again, it didn't get rid of all my symptoms, but it did help. So it is something worth considering. And if your doctor point blank refuses to run the tests and to even try changing your medication, look for a new doctor. It's your health. You don't have to live like that. And if they're not going to help you, find somebody that will. And the bonus now with what's going on with COVID is a lot of clinics, a lot of doctor surgeries, private doctors are now offering online consultations. So you are not limited to the doctors in your area. You can do your research, find out who is treating it fully, doing the full panel, kind of looking at all the medication options, looking at diet and lifestyle, and pick the doctor that you're looking for. So they are my top 3 tips for when you are dealing with kind of getting diagnosed, getting treated, and kind of the common things that tend to crop up.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I love that last bit about, if you're not getting the service you think you deserve, then change the doctor, because I think it's very common and quite normal for us to get that. It's that that kind of thing where it's like white coat syndrome in a way. You see a doctor and you just think, this is it, I have to just say yes, okay, and you scuttle in and you scuttle out. I know now at the moment it's online. I haven't seen a doctor in years, thank God, but you know, it's kind of all online, whatever it might be. You have a finite amount of time, and we're very polite, and we just accept what we're told, and we don't ever question things. So I think it is very important that you do question when it comes to your health. Absolutely, 100%. So we did have a question from somebody that's recently being diagnosed with an underactive thyroid, and at first it was suggested to them that they can try and manage it naturally. Then they've been told that they actually need to go on medication. They would like to know, like, broadly speaking, would you say that it is possible to manage an underactive thyroid with lifestyle and diet changes?
It's a little difficult to kind of say completely either way there. For some people, it is completely possible.
Yeah.
For others, it is not. You have to kind of take account of what's going on. And if you need medication, then don't avoid it just for the sake of it. It does give you it replaces that hormone that you're not producing yourself. So if you need it, then you have to take it. There is no way around that. It is life-saving. Without your thyroid hormone, you cannot function. So if you do need it, then yes, take it. But if you catch it early enough, if you catch it with subclinical Hashimoto's, so you've got elevated antibodies and all your other results are in range, then it's completely doable to try at least without medication before. I mean, most doctors won't even put you on medication at that point anyway. Even if you have symptoms, they will look at your kind of main results and go, no, at the moment your thyroid is still managing, even if you feel like crap.
Yeah.
So yes, I would definitely look at your diet and your lifestyle, work out what's going on, find out what is the root causes for you, and for everybody that's going to be different. What got you into this is going to be very unique. It's usually a multitude of things. For me, I had a very stressful kind of period, kind of with exams at university, with bereavement. I had glandular fever. I was working as well as studying. I was playing sports in all my spare time, and then I was obviously partying whilst I was at university. I got glandular fever. I had my hepatitis B vaccination, and my basically immune system just went, whoa, what the hell is going on? And that is when I started to have symptoms. So for everybody, it's going to be unique of what kind of got you to where you are. So you need to unpick that, and you need to find out what is triggering that immune attack. Obviously, diet is massive. So you need to look at food sensitivities. Are you eating things that you are sensitive to that is triggering your immune system? Are you eating problem foods? So problem foods for the thyroid tend to be gluten, dairy, and soy. They can all interfere with and increase your autoimmune attack. So they are three of the main ones that I look at initially. But obviously there are other food sensitivities that kind of will be unique to you. For me, egg whites, chocolate, any grain that came from grass triggers my gluten antibodies, as the structure of the protein is quite similar. So you need to get to the bottom of that. And also the things that kind of cause inflammation. So autoimmune disease is an inflammation-driven disease. So you need to lower that inflammation. Things that can cause inflammation in your diet is sugar, processed foods that are full of emulsifiers, additives, preservatives, and then also refined foods, so refined carbohydrates that have no fiber, very little nutrition. It ends up basically as sugar in your system. So you want to be looking at those foods. Sugar for me was a massive kind of game changer, getting that out of my diet. I used to have tremor attacks. I used to kind of have what my husband referred to as my coma sleep, where I'd obviously it was probably a hyperglycemic incident, where my blood sugar was crashing because it was constantly spiking up and down. Where I'd have to lie down instantly, and I would be out for the count. He couldn't get a response out of me. He couldn't wake me. It was quite scary, I think. It felt more like being unconscious rather than asleep. So getting sugar out of my diet helped me massively. It kind of got rid of all that. It gave me more energy. It helped with the brain fog for sure. Like I said, you need to look at your nutrient deficiencies and address those through diet and supplements if necessary. You need to look at your digestive process and see if there's any imbalances in there. Have you got like an imbalanced gut bacteria? That speaks directly to your immune system. So if your gut bacteria are unhealthy, if you've got a lot of bacteria in there that are kind of what we kind of call the bad guys, then, and not so many of the good, then they're out of balance and they can't do what they're supposed to do. They can't regulate the immune system. So you need to make sure they're healthy. You need to look at your stomach acid. That is really, really important for those with Hashimoto's. It tends to be quite low. It's very associated with Hashimoto's to have low stomach acid. If you've got low stomach acid, you are not producing your digestive enzymes. You are not producing things, like I said, with the intrinsic factor for absorbing your B12. You are not going to be breaking your food down. You're not going to be absorbing your food properly, which means you're going to be deficient in certain nutrients, but it's also going to be damaging your gut wall. It's going to be impairing your immune system and increasing that response. Other things to look at further down the line, if you've looked at that and things aren't improving, you need to look at testing for things like SIBO, H. pylori, Epstein-Barr virus, Candida. All of these can kind of play havoc with your system, and getting that under control and getting rid of those is really important. And a lot of this is going to lead to basically leaky gut, and things are then getting out of your gut into your bloodstream. It's then triggering your immune system, and that's going to make your immune system attack things that it shouldn't be attacking way more than it should do. So that's why diet is so important. And then lifestyle, there's various things with lifestyle that you need to consider. Stress is a major one. It really does impact your thyroid massively. If you're stressed, even if it's that underlying like kind of level of stress that's just always there, that is going to lead to increased cortisol. It's going to lead to blood sugar dysregulation. You're going to notice that your T4 to T3 conversion drops. So that means your metabolism is going to slow down, your symptoms are going to increase, and it also increases your T4 to reverse T3 conversion. So getting your stress under control is massive. For me, it was something I overlooked for quite a while because I had been told by doctors, it's all in your head, you're imagining it. So I was very resistant to addressing the stress side of things. Stress does have a physical response in your body. It does cause physical symptoms. I'm not saying to anyone that you are imagining it, that it is in your head, because I know how unpleasant that is to be told that, but it does play a part. You do need to try and manage that. So you do need to introduce techniques such as meditation, EFT, like Rachel kind of does. Your deep breathing, visualization, even just taking time for yourself, which most of us don't do. It's really important. And then making sure you're getting good sleep, making sure you are exercising, but not excessively, because that can cause too much inflammation. And then you need to look at things like the products in your kind of life, your beauty products, the amount of chemicals we have in our products that are endocrine system disruptors. And obviously, as your thyroid is part of your endocrine system, if you knock one out of balance, you are going to knock your whole endocrine system out of balance. So it's going to affect your adrenals, it's going to affect your sex hormones, so your libido, your fertility, things like that. So you need to kind of really look at what you are putting on your skin, in your hair, what you're cleaning your house with. I had to really look at that. One of the big ones for me was hair dye. Until I got kind of the diet out of kind of sorted and I started to feel pretty good, I dyed my hair about 3 months after I changed everything, and it made me so sick. And I hadn't even, because I felt so ill all the time, that I hadn't realised that was doing that until I started to feel good, and I was like, whoa, that was a massive change for me. So and then looking at other toxins such as things like mold, pesticides obviously can disrupt your endocrine system, and yeah, basically it's a big picture. You need to look at the whole thing. It is perfectly doable to manage it. I do it every day. I don't feel deprived from what I eat or from the lifestyle that I kind of live now. The difference in how it's made me feel makes it worth everything that I've given up. And the same with my clients. I see it time and time again. When I start introducing like the changes and kind of saying, oh, let's try stopping this for a little bit, there's that hesitancy, there's that kind of, oh, I don't really want to do without whatever it is, whether that's the dairy, the gluten or whatever else. but when at 3 weeks later, when I see them, the change is massive and they don't want to go back. So it is definitely worth looking into. I can't prescribe a specific diet because we're all individual. So what works for one might not work for another person. So the AIP for me was good. For other people, they found it doesn't help. They found ketos help them, or kind of like the SAD diet, oh gosh, I can't think now.
The SAD?
Carbohydrate.
The standard American diet?
Yeah, no, not the SAD. It's the, oh gosh. It's gone. I can't think of it. It'll come to me. I bet it'll come to me as soon as it can. The low carbohydrate diet. I can't remember it now.
Yeah.
Specific carbohydrate diet, I think.
Yeah.
SCD, I think. Yeah. But yeah, it is very individual. So yeah, you have to dig down to find that. And if you're struggling, don't do it on your own. I didn't. I got help. It's very difficult to be objective when it's your own health. When you don't want to remove a certain thing or change a certain habit, it's much easier to do when somebody else is telling you to do it and why you should be doing it than trying to do it on your own. I found that even now, if I have a blip with my health, I go back to my nutritional therapist, because they keep me accountable. They can look objectively at what's going on in my life with my diet and say, oh, you've changed that, or kind of this is happening and we need to kind of address it. It's very difficult to do on your own, unfortunately.
Yeah. Gracie said about ways to de-stress. So stress is a necessary thing in our life. It is unavoidable, and short bursts of stress are good for us. There are certain processes in the body that love a bit of stress, but it's transforming the low-lying constant stress. I think, Gracie, stress is very individual. What stresses one person out does not necessarily stress out somebody else. We've all got different tolerances to stress in our lives. But I mean, Helen did list a few things, but it's probably worth you dropping each of us a DM after this, and we can have a chat to you about actually how you're managing your own life and your stress, and we can make some suggestions as to things that can help. Ursula's said Atkins. I don't know if she means like Atkins diet or that kind of, it could be a suggestion as to what kind of thing maybe that Ursula's used herself. Atkins isn't used so much now, is it? It did get a bit of bad press.
It's not the best balanced.
No, but there's it's more like that. It's that paleo kind of approach, isn't it? Which is
like clean eating, basically whole foods.
But I think the important thing is it is individual to every single person, and it is hard to do it on your own. So you must reach out to Helen. She is very happy to give you some general advice on your own situation. And, you know, when people work with you, explain to us briefly before we finish, how can people work with you? Because your experience, your life experience of this is incredible. The knowledge you have since learned on how to manage this, whether you're on medication, whether you've somehow avoided it, whatever your situation, how do you work with people, and how can they work with you?
I've got a couple of things going on at the moment. So I have a 1-to-1 6-month Hashimoto's healing program. That is completely bespoke. It is tailored to you. So basically I look at what is going on with your diet. I look at what is going on currently with your lifestyle. I also look at your health history, your family health history, and basically put the whole picture together of what is likely, what's got you where you are now and what is keeping you there, how we can change that. So that's what it does. I walk you through step by step every change you need to make. I keep you accountable. I give you the support you need, and I see you probably every 3 weeks with that. And you have the email and messenger support in between, so you're never on your own if you have a question. That is very hands-on. That is very personal, and it gets amazing results. The clients that I've worked with it have the same results that I have. They're now living pretty much a normal life again, enjoying it, have no issues with fatigue or mood issues or the kind of brain fog, the weight kind. It does work. It is intense, but it is worth it. Then I have a weight loss program at the moment, a Hashimoto's weight loss roadmap. This is a self-guided mini course, so it walks you through exactly what is stopping you from losing that weight, what things you need to change, how you can change those, and it also comes with a 14-day meal plan with recipes and shopping lists, so that you don't even have to think about it. You can just follow it and repeat if you wish. They're the two things that I have going on at the moment. So you can find information on both of those in my bio, in the link in there. And also, obviously, if you want to DM me, my DMs are always open. I'm always happy to answer questions. So.
That has been absolutely incredible. I mean, the amount of information you passed on to us in that 45 minutes has been mind-blowing, and I guess there'll be a lot of people watching this later and re-watching with note to make notes, because there's so much to take in. But yeah, Helen is such a helpful, incredible nutritionist. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask any questions. We're both here to support you in any way we can. Thank you so much for being on here today and for sharing that with us and giving us your time. I'll pop this onto my grid, and I'll put some links in so that you guys can find Helen. And I'll hope to see you again soon.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.